the cold comfort of silence. The rhythmic, clinical hiss of the ventilator was the only thing proving I was still part of the living world. Yet as I watched my mother check her watch for the third time in 10 minutes, I realized I was already a ghost to her. I lay there, trapped in a body that had betrayed me. A week ago, a freak car accident had crushed my ribs and sent my lungs into failure. I was conscious, but barely. My world was a haze of white ceilings and the smell of antiseptic. But the sharpest pain wasn't coming from my chest. It was coming from the conversation happening at the foot of my bed. "If we don't leave by 5, we'll miss the pre-boarding," my sister Maya whispered. She wasn't looking at me. She was scrolling through her phone, probably checking the weather in Bali. "I know, honey," my mother replied, her voice hushed but lacking any tremor of grief. "I just feel people might talk. Leaving while Alara is still in the ICU. The doctor said she's stable." "Mom," Maya snapped, her impatience cutting through the room like a cold draft. "This trip was planned months ago. It's my 30th birthday gift. Am I supposed to suffer because Alara's brakes failed? She's sleeping anyway. She won't even know we're gone." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them I was right there, behind my closed eyelids, feeling every word like a serrated blade. I wanted to remind them that I was the daughter who stayed behind to fix the shingles on their roof, the one who paid for Dad's heart medication when his pension fell short. "You're right." My father's voice joined in. He patted Maya's hand. "We've all been under a lot of stress. A week at the resort will do us good. We'll leave a note for the nurses." They didn't stay until 5. They left at 4:15 p.m. I heard the soft click of the door, and then the silence of the ICU swallowed me whole. For 3 days, I was a Jane Doe with a family. The nurses would come in, their voices pitying. "Still no visitors for 402? I heard one whisper. By the 4th day, I was moved out of the ICU into a private recovery room. My strength was returning, though my heart felt like it had been turned to ash. When the head nurse, a kind woman named Evelyn, came in to check my vitals, she looked at the empty flower vases and the lack of cards. "Your family called," she said softly, tucking the sheets around me. "They said they were out of the country on a family emergency." I let out a dry, hollow laugh that hurt my lungs. "The emergency is a beach in Indonesia, Evelyn." She looked away, her eyes brimming with a professional kind of sorrow. "Well, someone has been here, every night, from 8 p.m. until midnight. They don't stay in the room, the rules are strict, but they sit in the waiting area. They've been signing the visitor log since the night of your accident." I frowned, the fog in my brain clearing. "My parents left the night of the accident. Who was it?" "I don't know," Evelyn said. "They never asked to come in. They just waited. Here, let me get the log from the desk. Maybe it's a friend you forgot about." When she brought the clipboard back, I flipped through the pages with trembling fingers. On the night I was brought in, while my parents were packing their suitcases for a tropical getaway, a name was written in firm, elegant cursive. Julian Thorne. I didn't recognize the name. Not from school, not from work, not from my neighborhood. But as I looked at the entries for the following nights, I saw a note scrawled in the margin next to his name on the 3rd night. It said, * protecting the secret. Room 402. *. Below that, there was a phone number and a date. October 14th, 1994. My heart stopped. October 14th was my birthday. But I was born in 1996. At least that's what my birth certificate and my parents had told me for 32 years. The paper felt heavy in my hand, the ink blurring as my eyes filled with hot, stinging tears. October 14th, 1994. 2 years before I supposedly existed. I stared at Julian Thorne's name, a name that felt like a key to a door I didn't even know was locked. That evening, I didn't sleep. I watched the clock on the wall, the red digital numbers bleeding into the darkness. 7:58, 7:59, 8 p.m. I forced myself upright, pushing through the agonizing pull on my stitches. I grabbed my 4-pole, using it as a crutch, and shuffled toward the door. Every step felt like walking through deep water, but the fire of betrayal in my gut acted as fuel. I cracked the door just an inch. At the end of the long, dimly lit hallway sat a man. He wasn't a ghost, though he sat as still as one. He looked to be in his late 50s, wearing a weathered charcoal coat, his silver hair neatly combed. He wasn't on a phone. He wasn't reading. He was just looking at the door of my room with an expression of such profound, quiet longing that it took my breath away. "Julian," I croaked, my voice a mere rasp. He stood up so fast his chair screeched against the linoleum. He took a step toward me, then stopped, his hands hovering in the air as if he were afraid I'd shatter if he got too close. "Alara," he whispered. The way he said my name, it wasn't the casual way my father said it. It sounded like a prayer. "You shouldn't be out of bed. Who are you?" I demanded, leaning heavily on the pole. "And why is my birthday written in that log as 1994? He looked around nervously, his eyes landing on the nurse's station. "Not here. Please. Your parents. They'll be back soon. They're in Bali, Julian. They left me here to die so they could drink mimosas by a pool." I spat, the bitterness finally overflowing. "Tell me the truth." He guided me back into my room, his touch gentle, almost reverent. He sat in the stiff plastic chair where my mother had sat just days before, checking her watch. "I was your mother's first husband," he began, his voice trembling. "Not Margaret, your real mother. Her name was Elena. She was a nurse here in this very hospital." I felt the world tilt. "Margaret is my mother. I have her eyes." "No," Julian said, reaching into his coat and pulling out a small, frayed photograph. He handed it to me. It was a woman standing in a garden, laughing. She had my wide, curious eyes. She had the same small mole on her left cheek. "Margaret is Elena's sister, your aunt." He took a shaky breath. "In 1994, there was an accident. Elena didn't make it, but the doctors saved you. You were a miracle, Alara. But I was broken. I had lost the love of my life. I had no money, and I was facing a prison sentence for a debt I couldn't pay. Margaret and her husband, David, they couldn't have children. They offered me a deal. They would pay my debts and give you a life of luxury. But I had to disappear. I had to sign away my rights and let them pretend you were theirs. Born 2 years later, to erase the paper trail of the tragedy. You sold me?" I whispered, the 4-pole rattling as my hand shook. "I thought I was saving you," he sobbed, burying his face in his hands. "I watched from the shadows for 32 years. I saw you graduate. I saw you get your first job. And when I saw the news of the crash, I couldn't stay away anymore. I saw them leave you, Alara. I saw them walk out of that ICU with suitcases while you were fighting for air. I realized then, I didn't save you. I handed you to monsters." I looked at the photo of Elena, my mother, a woman who died giving me life, only to be replaced by a woman who wouldn't even skip a vacation to see if I survived. "They get back tomorrow?" I said, my voice turning cold and hard as flint. "They think they're coming home to a grateful, recovering daughter who will thank them for their family emergency sacrifice." I looked at Julian. "I need you to help me. We're going to give them a welcome home they'll never forget." The following morning, the room smelled of lilies. Julian had brought them, a stark contrast to the sterile air. I sat upright in a chair, not the bed, wearing my own clothes instead of the thin hospital gown. I looked like a person again, but inside, the girl who had spent 32 years trying to earn the love of Margaret and David was gone. When the door swung open at 2 p.m., my sister Maya walked in first, glowing with a tan that looked like an insult. Behind her, my parents entered, carrying shopping bags from the airport duty-free. "Oh, look at you," Margaret chirped, her voice hitting that familiar, high-pitched note of performative concern. "Up and dressed. We were so worried, Alara. The signal in the mountains was just terrible. We couldn't call as much as we wanted. Did you have a nice trip?" I asked. My voice was eerily calm, a stillness before a storm. "It was all right," my father said, tossing a souvenir keychain onto my bedside table. "But enough about us. How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "I'm feeling enlightened," I said. I signaled to the bathroom door. Julian walked out slowly. The color drained from David's face so fast I thought he might faint. Margaret dropped her designer shopping bag. A bottle of expensive perfume shattered inside it, filling the room with a cloying, suffocating scent. "Julian," David whispered, his voice cracking. "What are you doing here? We had an agreement." "The agreement ended when you left your flesh and blood in a coma to go tanning," Julian said, his voice steady and full of a dignity David would never possess. "Alara, honey, don't listen to him," Margaret scrambled, stepping toward me. "He's a troubled man. He's lying because he's bitter." "I saw the visitor log, Margaret," I said, the name feeling bitter on my tongue. "And I've seen the way you look at Maya versus the way you look at me, like I'm a debt you're tired of paying. All these years, I thought I wasn't enough. I worked myself to the bone to be the perfect daughter so you'd finally love me as much as her. But I wasn't your daughter. I was a transaction. Maya looked back and forth, confused. What is she talking about? Who is this man? He's my father, Maya, I said, standing up. The pain in my ribs was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the clarity in my mind. And the woman who actually gave birth to me is a woman you've spent 30 years pretending never existed. I handed David a manila envelope. Inside is a copy of the visitor log and the contact for my lawyer. I'm suing for the emotional distress and the fraudulent concealment of my identity. But more than that, I'm done. I want every cent I've spent on your mortgage and your medications back. Consider it a refund for a failed investment. You can't do this, Margaret wailed, the mask finally slipping into a snarl. We raised you. We gave you everything. You gave me a roof and a lie, I replied. Julian gave me 4 nights of his life in a waiting room when I had nothing else. Now please leave. I have a real family to get to know. They left, not with a bang, but with a series of frantic, whispered arguments that faded down the hallway. For the first time in my life, the silence that followed didn't feel lonely. Felt clean. Julian stayed with me while I signed my discharge papers. We walked out of that hospital together. Slowly, painfully, but together. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were 32 years of lost time to bridge and a legal battle to fight. But as the sun hit my face for the first time in weeks, I realized that trust isn't something you're born into. It's earned in the quiet hours, in the waiting rooms of life, by the people who stay when everyone else has a flight to catch. #closing/audience connection. My recovery took months, but my healing started the moment I chose the truth over a comfortable lie. I spent my first real birthday in October with Julian, visiting a quiet grave covered in fresh lilies. I finally know who I am, and for the first time, that is enough. Life has a way of stripping us down to our bones just to show us what we're actually made of. It took a crash and a betrayal for me to find the man who had been loving me from the shadows all along. But I have to ask you, if you found out your entire life was built on a paid-for secret, would you confront the people who raised you, or would you keep the peace for the sake of the only family you've ever known? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Your stories of resilience are what keep this community strong. Don't forget to subscribe to Broken Trust Stories for more journeys through the heart's hardest truths. Be kind to yourselves. Until next time.